Hey everyone, it's JT and welcome back to another live stream. So excited to have you all here today. I'm going to be talking about how to answer the dreaded question, tell me about yourself in job interviews. This is something that comes up all the time in the Work It Daily platform. And, as I'm getting ready here and bringing this up, I'm thinking of that, just this past week, how many people we've been prepping for interviews, big interviews that they have. And this question, while so simple, can be one of the trickiest to answer. So I really want to dive in deep today on this and make sure that you understand what to say and how to say it. But before I do that, I have to remind everybody, because we're broadcasting on 5 different platforms today, which still blows my mind. I can't believe that we're able to do that. But it's really important to me that you know that the only way you can get your questions answered during the live session is if you are following me on LinkedIn. It's just how it works. The actual comments are on LinkedIn. You have to go over to the LinkedIn, to my page, my profile page, and you have to hit the follow button. If you are actually following me, my profile on LinkedIn, it will then enable you to not only get instant notifications when we go live, which we do several times a week, but also it's going to enable you to get in there and ask your questions in real time. And my coworkers here are pulling all of your questions from the LinkedIn feed, and only the LinkedIn feed. It's the only way I can access them. So totally okay if you're watching on one of the other platforms. We're glad to have you here. Sit back and relax. But if you are itching to ask a question, you're going to want to go over to LinkedIn, follow me there so that you can access it. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's get back to it because I want to get down to the business of talking about this question. So first thing, as I said, this is what's called a tricky behavioral question. So how many of you know what a behavioral question is? Raise your hands in the feed. If you do, say yes or no. I want to see how many people know what a behavioral question is. Yes or no, really quick, put it in the feed. Okay, all right. So while you're popping that up, let me explain. Behavioral questions have become a very popular technique in modern recruiting today. It's something a lot of recruiters have been taught to do. And essentially, it's when we ask you an open-ended question. So this is going to be a question that requires a more than one word answer. And the reason that behavioral questions are asked, just think of the term behavioral question, is that while you're talking, we're observing your behavior. Specifically, we're looking at your personality. So your voice tone, your energy, what you're saying, how you're saying it. We're trying to get a sense of who you are from a personality standpoint. We're trying to understand your aptitude, meaning how do you approach things? How do you view tasks? How do you get things done? What's your methodology? And then obviously we're trying to understand whether or not you have the actual experience. So an open-ended behavioral question gives us insights into the kind of person that you are so that we can make a determination of whether or not your combination, your unique combination of personality, aptitude, and experience would in fact do well, thrive in the company culture. The reason this has become so important is that everybody in recruiting, if you've ever hired somebody who had all the experience, they were the most experienced person, but their personality or their style did not mesh the corporate culture, knows it's an epic fail. It's an epic fail. So this is why it's very important that recruiters assess people based on this, hiring managers, et cetera, before they bring somebody on. You're very expensive. You're going to cost them thousands of dollars. I've said this before in the live stream. Let me mention it again. It costs about 130 to 140% of your salary to hire you. Companies have to pay additional taxes, training, et cetera, office expenses. So it's no small thing. And they don't want to get it wrong. So you have to make sure that somebody's going to be a cultural fit for the organization. And behavioral questions are one of the techniques they're using to do that. So like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, behavioral questions are the new normal. And asking the question, tell me about yourself, is a very common one. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, let's look at this question, because what I need to do is reframe how you look at it and what they're really asking you. That's the secret to success here. So what they're really asking you when they say, tell me about yourself, is what do you do? I've seen a lot of people make the mistake if they say, tell me about yourself, and all of a sudden people roll into TMI mode. If you know what that is, too much information. They get really personal. They tell this very long story. They're sort of all over the place, and it backfires on them. So when asked this question, they're looking to make sure that you've thought about this in advance, and you really want to communicate a brand. You really want to get across to them something very succinct about yourself. Having the capacity to answer this question correctly is key. Now, sometimes when they say, this question, tell me about yourself. Sometimes they're asking, hey, walk me through your resume, or, take me chronologically through your work history. And you can always clarify that. You can say, all right, do you want me to take you through my work history, or do you want me to just kind of give you an overall summary about me as a professional? So you're totally welcome to clarify that if you want to. And I've done that in the past. But I will tell you, you can never go wrong by answering this question with this sort of personal branding statement that you create that helps them understand what you do. Because you're not going to say, when we get asked the question, what do you do? The biggest mistake people make is they actually answer it with a noun. What do you do? Do is a verb. They're asking for you to understand, like, what do you do? But society has trained us to answer this question with our label, our noun, right? So I'm an accountant, I'm a marketing director. And the problem with that, as we know, is that it creates judgment. In fact, yesterday, I did an article on LinkedIn. If you didn't see it, I wrote this on LinkedIn, and we're going to pop the link in for you. But I wrote all about that there's really a better way to answer the question, what do you do? And that all of us, as awkward as it is to not give them the 1 or 2 word answer, right? Like, not for me to say I'm a career coach, but instead to give them my personal branding statement, as odd as that feels, because it's going against society's norms. When you've done it a few times and you get over the initial look of the person going, wait, what? You see how much value this branding statement has, how it enables you to let people really understand who you are, and how to remove a lot of initial judgment. Because this thing is so important to me. I want you to think about this. The human brain, and if you read my quote here, the human brain is literally designed to process thousands of experiences a day. And so what it has to do is process it and label it. It attaches feeling or meaning to these experiences, and it puts it away like an old-fashioned Rolodex. It files it away. And then when some similar experience comes up, instead of having to reprocess from the beginning, our brain naturally pulls up all the files on that subject and forms an opinion. And this was designed so that humans could react. They could evolve. They could work at a faster pace, leveraging this. This is why our brains are so evolved. The problem with it is that it's literally how we create judgment when it comes to careers. Because if you just respond with, I'm an accountant, I'm going to think about every reference I have on what an accountant is or isn't, what kind of personality they have, all those sorts of things, any accountants I've worked with in the past. And I'm now going to pass judgment on, initial judgment at least, on you, bias on you. And this has been a pet peeve of mine for as long as I've been a career coach. You should not answer the question with just your job title. You should be answering it with your branding statement so that you can shape the message. You control the narrative. You get them to understand who you are instead of them making assumptions based on whoever they've met in the past. Okay? So let me explain why that's important. Let's go back here. Let me go back here. If I know when they say, tell me about yourself in the actual job interview, if I realize that's also very similar to meeting somebody who says, what do you do? Okay, I can use the same response in both of those situations. So I'm getting a 2 for the price of 1. If I develop and craft a really good personal branding statement, I'm now able to pull that out in these job interviews and shape their initial thoughts around me and show that I've given some serious consideration to what I want to say here. Does that make sense, everybody? If it does, put a big yes in the chat for me. Okay. So again, same thing as what do you do, which means it's about time you tell a story. Storytelling matters. Now, I've mentioned this week on the feed before, and I'm going to tell you again, I read this fascinating article around some studies that show that people that are good storytellers are perceived as more attractive. And that's because people that can tell good stories earn more trust and respect. The assumption is if you have the capacity to tell this story, then you've had experiences that enable you to shape that story. And so some of you are going, well, wait a minute, JT, that's not fair. That means that, really great talkers, smooth talkers, shady people, are going to excel. Yeah, that's unfortunate, right? We know that. We all know somebody who can talk a good game. But I also don't think you have to be some sort of crazy extrovert to tell a great story. I think if you can think your stories through and be very intentional about what you say and how you say it, anyone can be a good storyteller. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room, right? But you do have to be able to articulate your stories because they matter, especially when it comes to personal branding. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at how do we answer this question, what do you do? Or in this case, in the interview, tell me about yourself. There are 3 things that you want to say that you want to get across. You ready? First thing, you want to talk about the thing that you most love about your work, the thing that you do, right? And why it's important. So that's pretty key, okay? The thing that I most enjoy doing within my work, within my skill set, and why that's important work to do, in my opinion, right? The second thing I need to talk about is I have to explain how this solves a problem, alleviates a pain, or makes people feel better. So I have to provide some context. This is where the storytelling comes in to help the listener understand why this is important work and why I love to do it. And then the last thing is I need to close by talking about how I'm using this passion to focus on a bigger problem right now. So how am I applying my passion, my knowledge, my skills, my expertise in order to add value or to create even more value? And this is very important because subliminally, right, what you're doing through this 3 parts is you're saying, first of all, I know what I'm good at, and I know why it's valuable. Secondly, here's why you should know it's important and valuable. Let me explain so you can understand it. And third, now let me tell you how I learn and grow as a professional, how I make sure that I'm staying relevant and that I'm continuing to add value by letting you know what I'm focused on next. This is a sign of a truly dialed in expert. And the beautiful part about giving an answer like this is they can say, wow, like, let's talk about that. Okay, let's go. Now that you've shared with me a little bit about yourself, you've branded yourself. Now let's go over and look at your resume. Let's talk about this. This is your opportunity. This is a soundbite. And this is your opportunity to implant in the person's head your soundbite. You're controlling the message. All right. So I want to give you an example. Obviously, I'll use myself as an example because I practice what I preach. And I wrote about this in the article as well. So instead, when I meet people, it would be very easy. In fact, if I don't want to have a career conversation, if I don't want to get into it, the right thing to do is just say, I'm a career coach. Tell me about yourself. I'm a career coach. All right. That's the fastest way to shut down a conversation ever, right? What do you do? I'm a career coach. Maybe they'll be interested, but I've really not opened that up. So instead, what I want to do, and by the way, I've timed this. When I deliver this, it takes about 15 seconds. So it's not, a big thing, but I'll read it out loud to you. It says, and when they say, what do you do? Or tell me about yourself. Well, I help people grow their careers because if your career isn't growing, it's dying today, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there lacking the right information needed to make things better. My job is to help them remove the roadblocks so they can see a clearer path to success. And these days, I'm focused on helping people understand how job search really works so they can find a new job or change careers faster. That's it. 3 sentences. But in that moment, I've told a story that is going to implant in their brain. I have now defined what career coaching is by my definition. And hopefully, if it's been interesting enough, they'll say, really? Okay. And usually somebody's got their own story, they want to get into it, and we go from there. Okay. But why waste that opportunity on saying something that doesn't make sense or that rambles? This is the perfect balance of information to provide when you're in that job interview and they say, tell me about yourself. This is a perfect soundbite. It's not too little. It's not too much. And it shows you've really been thinking about this question. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? It's so important that you do some work around this question because it's a tricky one. Now, last thing I'm going to say, practice, practice, practice. I know that sounds crazy and people go, but JT, I don't want to sound canned in the interview. I don't want to sound rehearsed. I don't expect you to sound rehearsed. I'll tell you what happens. People don't read through their interview prep enough. So at Work It Daily, when our members join, we have this entire tutorial on interview prep. Every stage of the interview, you learn, there's a video. And one key part is we give you 18 behavioral questions. They're the most common behavioral questions you're going to see. And people write out their answers to every single one. Then they submit them to the coaches and the coaches can take a look at them and say, yes, you're answering that one right, or you're not answering that one right. Okay. So they review all the way through it. But then we say to them, all right, now you need to keep reading these to yourself. Keep reading them out loud to yourself. Read them over and over and over again till you are sick of your own voice. You are so done listening to these answers. You've read them a million times. The reason for that is when you get in the interview and now your nerves are a little up because you're nervous because you want to do well. You want to make a good first impression. When they ask you, that positive energy, that excitement of, I know the answer to this, is going to come through. And while you're not going to have it memorized, you're going to have committed enough of it to memory that it'll come out sounding more natural and normal with a lot less ahs, sort of over here, ending up over here, forgetting. You'll be more dialed in on your answers. And I just can't stress this enough. You know, if it's already hard enough to get a job interview today, to blow a job interview because you don't practice your interview prep questions, shame on you, right? We have got to take our job searching up to a higher level these days. People don't like it. They don't want to hear that, but this is a job, right? This is a customer that's willing to pay you thousands of dollars. You want this job, you've got to do your homework. So practice, and practice some more. Okay, folks? It's really important you do that. And as you get better and better at this, it gets easier and easier. Awesome.